He just wanted a quiet drink at the bar. But one man decided to turn it into a show. That evening, Arnold Schwarzenegger walked into an ordinary bar, no cameras, no security, no spotlight. He was looking for peace. But instead of quiet, he got provoked. A loudmouth. A crowd. Pressure. Everyone expected an explosion. But Arnold didn't throw a punch. He responded with something no one saw coming. Watch this video till the end to find out what happened. It just might change your life too. It was just after 7:30 p.m. on a Thursday when the dusty neon, Rudy's Bar, sign blinked to life. The small pub sat on the corner of a quiet street in Santa Clarita, sandwiched between a laundromat and a 24-hour donut shop. Inside, the usual crowd was already settling in, truckers nursing long necks, 2 off-duty nurses laughing over nachos, and an older man playing pool with himself. Rudy's wasn't famous. It wasn't flashy. It was just home for locals. That's why, when the door creaked open and Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped inside, wearing jeans, boots, and a simple olive green jacket, nobody quite knew what to do. He moved like someone who had lived through 1,000 lives. Broad shoulders. Calm eyes. Weathered but powerful, like a mountain that had seen its fair share of storms. No entourage. No fanfare. Just Arnold. Most people froze. Not because they were scared, but because it was him. And not from a distance. Not in a movie. Here. In their bar. He took a slow look around, nodded politely to no one in particular, and stepped up to the bar. Just finished a shoot nearby, he said to the bartender, a woman named Cora with silver hair and a no-nonsense stare. Needed something real. Something quiet. Cora, unfazed, simply nodded and poured him a draft from the tap. He thanked her with a small smile, then took a seat at the far end of the bar, facing the room like a chess player scanning a board. People whispered. Phones stayed in pockets, for now. One person, however, didn't seem interested in whispers or restraint. Sitting near the center booth was Wade Porter, a man whose build was as big as his attitude. He worked construction by day and dominated pool tables and bar booths by night. Loud and proud. When Wade noticed the commotion, he craned his neck. And then he laughed. No way, he said, half loud. That's the action guy. The Arnold, right? His buddies chuckled nervously. Wade stood, slamming his pint down. What's a movie star doing in a place like this? Arnold turned his head slightly. Just enjoying a beer. Wade smiled. You sure you're in the right place? No red carpet here. Just real folks. Arnold nodded, unfazed. That's exactly why I'm here. People around the bar shifted in their seats. Wade took a step forward. You know, I've always wondered how tough you movie types really are. All those stunts, must be easy with 10 takes and a team of trainers, huh? Cora froze mid-pour. The nurses stopped talking. Even the jukebox seemed quieter. Arnold looked him over with calm curiosity. I don't believe I know you, he said, his voice even. But if you're trying to start something, I'd advise against it. Wade let out a theatrical laugh. Whoa. Big man's got some fire in him. You gonna show off one of those movie moves? Arnold didn't move. I came here for peace. But don't mistake calm for weakness. There was something about the way he said it. Not loud. Not angry. Just truth. Still, Wade wasn't backing off. He looked around, feeding off the tension like oxygen. You know what I think, he said. I think under all that movie muscle, you're just a guy in love with his own shadow. Someone in the back muttered, Wade, come on, man. Let it go. But Wade was too far gone. He walked up to the bar, too close, and stared at Arnold's glass. What's this? He sneered. You drink like a regular guy too. What happened to protein shakes and robot voices? Arnold turned to Cora. Do you mind? Cora's eyes narrowed. Wade, sit down. Wade ignored her. And then, with a smirk, he tapped the edge of Arnold's glass, making it wobble and spill a drop. The bar went dead silent. Arnold looked at the wet trail on the wood, then at Wade's hand. He exhaled slowly and stood up, not abruptly, but like someone drawing a line in permanent ink. When he rose, the room seemed smaller. Not just because of his size, but because of his stillness. He picked up a napkin, wiped the spill, and said nothing. Wade smirked. "Oh, come on. Don't tell me I scared the Terminator." And that's when Arnold spoke again. "Do you know the difference between a fighter and a bully?" Wade raised an eyebrow. "Do enlighten me." Arnold stepped closer, voice low. "A fighter trains to protect. A bully performs to impress." Wade's smile faltered. Arnold leaned in, his eyes sharp now. "And you're performing." The room felt like it was holding its breath. "I came here," Arnold continued, "after working 14 hours in the desert, with prosthetics glued to my face and sand in my boots. I wanted one quiet beer." He paused. "But now you've interrupted everyone's evening because you needed to prove something." A long silence followed. Arnold stepped back and looked around the bar. "I don't want trouble. But I won't walk away from it either." Wade's jaw tightened. People shifted in their chairs. A confrontation was close, maybe seconds away. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. The air inside Rudy's bar was thick with stillness, as if the entire room were frozen in anticipation. Cora subtly moved a bottle off the bar, just in case things escalated. Arnold and Wade stood less than a foot apart now, two towers of muscle and pride, but the tension had little to do with physicality. It was about ego. And something much more dangerous, embarrassment. Wade's eyes darted to his buddies at the pool table. They were watching, but not cheering anymore. They looked unsure. A few even looked worried. "Look," Wade muttered with a scoff, "I was just messing around." Arnold didn't move. His voice, when it came, was quiet, but thunderous in its calm. "You were trying to humiliate me. In front of your friends. Because you thought I wouldn't respond." Wade's jaw tensed. "And maybe you were right," Arnold continued. "Maybe I'm not here to prove anything." He turned slightly, as if to walk away, then stopped. "But let me ask you this." Everyone leaned in. "What happens to you if you're not the biggest guy in the room?" Wade blinked. "What?" Arnold stared him down. "Who are you, when nobody's watching?" Wade opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Arnold didn't wait for an answer. He stepped past him and returned to his stool. Sat down. Took a sip from what remained of his beer. And just like that, the moment was gone. Or so everyone thought. Wade stood in place, eyes burning, not with courage, but confusion. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He thought he'd get a rise. Maybe a viral video. Maybe even a tussle he could brag about for weeks. Instead, he got a question. One he didn't like the answer to. He turned to the bar, hands trembling slightly. "You think you're better than me?" he blurted out. Arnold didn't look up. "No. I think you're better than this." Wade stepped forward again, but Cora intervened this time, sliding between them with a presence that could stop a stampede. "That's enough," she said sharply. "Wade, sit your butt down or get out." Wade looked at her, then at the others. Eyes were on him. But now, they weren't admiring. They weren't amused. They were tired. The nurses. The old man by the pool table. The trucker who just walked in. Everyone had seen this show before, and Arnold had quietly ended the performance. Wade's shoulders dropped. He didn't speak. Didn't challenge further. He just turned, and walked back to his booth. The room exhaled. The jukebox started up again, as if on cue. Someone placed $1 in it without saying a word. Johnny Cash's voice began to hum through the speakers. Something about walking the line. Cora returned to Arnold and refilled his drink without asking. "On the house," she said, her voice still a little shaky. Arnold looked up and smiled faintly. "You didn't have to do that." "No," she said. "But I wanted to." A few minutes passed. The atmosphere at Rudy's began to ease again. Conversation returned. Laughter, cautious at first, rose like sunlight after a storm. And then, something remarkable happened. Wade stood up again. Only this time, he wasn't puffed up or posturing. He walked to the jukebox. Put in another $1. Selected something slower. Then, he walked over to Arnold. The whole bar went still again, but not with fear. Wade scratched the back of his neck. His voice cracked slightly. "Listen. I was out of line. I was drinking. Arnold raised a hand to stop him. You don't need to explain, he said. You just need to choose what kind of man you want to be. Wade nodded. His eyes looked different now. Less fire, more reflection. And in a voice just above a whisper, he said, "You've got more patience than I deserve." Arnold gave a small smile. "Patience isn't weakness, my friend. It's discipline." Wade chuckled dryly, nodded again, and walked back to his booth, this time sitting with a different posture. Smaller. Quieter. Maybe even, wiser. Cora looked at Arnold with something like awe. "You've been in a lot of fights, haven't you?" she asked. Arnold took a slow sip of his beer. Enough to know that winning isn't always about throwing punches. She chuckled. "You should come around more often." "Maybe I will." Just then, the door opened. A young couple stepped in, dressed in casual jeans, glancing around nervously. The guy's eyes widened when he recognized Arnold. He whispered something to his girlfriend, who gasped and clutched his arm. Arnold gave them a warm nod. "Hi there," he said. "Just a quiet night. Don't worry." The guy stepped forward timidly. "Mr. Schwarzenegger, would you mind, could we get a picture? We don't want to bother you." Arnold looked at them, then around the room, where calm had returned, laughter bubbling up again, glasses clinking. He stood up slowly. Smiled. "Sure. Just one." Cora snapped the photo behind the bar. After the couple thanked him a dozen times, Arnold returned to his stool. But the energy in the bar had changed again. Now it was admiration. Not because he was famous. But because everyone had seen what fame usually doesn't show. Grace. Humility. Strength, without violence. And as the jukebox played on, Arnold sat quietly, sipping his drink, as the people of Rudy's bar finally returned to their normal night, grateful that greatness, when it walks into a room, doesn't always need to shout. The night at Rudy's bar continued, but with a different rhythm now. It was as if the room itself had taken a breath, relieved, grounded. Wade sat back in his booth, swirling the last inch of his beer, quiet and contemplative. His usual bravado had melted into something unspoken. He wasn't just humbled, he was learning. And everyone could feel it. Arnold, meanwhile, stayed at his stool. He didn't ask for another drink. He didn't check his phone. He simply watched. Observed. His posture was relaxed, but there was something quietly vigilant about him, like a lion in the grass, peaceful until provoked. Across the room, the pool table clicked back into action. The old man playing solo before was now paired with a college kid who had mustered up the courage to approach. They traded shots and stories, the old man's laugh filling the space again. Cora leaned against the back wall, watching the whole thing unfold with a mix of curiosity and admiration. She stepped over to Arnold. "You know," she said quietly, "we've had all kinds walk into this bar. Truckers, preachers, drifters, even one guy who claimed he was Elvis's second cousin." Arnold smiled. "Was he?" "No idea. He sang well, though." She chuckled, then got a bit more serious. "But none of them ever walked in, got challenged, refused to fight, and still walked out winning." Arnold took a moment before responding. "Violence can make you feared. But grace, that makes you remembered." Cora raised an eyebrow. "That's something you picked up in Hollywood?" He shook his head slowly. "I learned that when I was a teenager. In Austria. There was a local boy who mocked me every day for lifting weights. Said I'd never be anything." Cora folded her arms. "What happened to him?" Arnold paused, then looked her squarely in the eye. "I outlifted him. But I didn't outshout him. That's when I realized, people who try to bring you down aren't really aiming at you. They're aiming at their own reflection." Cora blinked, then let out a low whistle. "No offense, but you're a lot deeper than the movies let on." Arnold laughed. "Don't believe everything you see on screen." Just then, the college kid at the pool table called out, "Mr. Schwarzenegger." Arnold turned toward him. "You, ever miss it? All the lights and action." The bar hushed again, this time out of respect, not tension. Everyone leaned in, curious. Arnold turned slightly in his stool, now facing the whole bar. He rested his elbows on his knees, contemplative. "I loved the movies. Still do. And politics, too, in its own way. But the spotlight is a strange thing. It doesn't warm you. It just shows your shape to the world, and sometimes, the world wants to twist that shape into what they need. He looked down at his boots, dusty from the day's filming. Then back up. But when I walk into a place like this, no script, no director, no security, just people, I remember who I really am. A guy who came from nothing. Who worked hard. Who made a lot of mistakes. And who learned that power isn't what you can lift. He tapped his chest lightly. It's what you can carry, in here. A quiet rolled through the bar. It wasn't applause, but something deeper, approval. The trucker near the jukebox raised his glass. To carrying the right weight. Everyone followed suit. To the right weight, they echoed. Arnold smiled and nodded once. After a while, conversations returned. Laughter again, but this time softer. Real. Like the bar had hit reset on itself. Wade stood slowly and walked back over, not to challenge, not to posture, but to offer something very different. He extended a hand. Arnold turned and looked at it for a second, then stood and shook it firmly. I didn't like how I acted earlier, Wade said, just loud enough for a few people to hear. And I sure didn't deserve the way you handled it. Arnold nodded. We've all had our bad nights. What matters is what you do after them. Wade looked down, then back up. You're welcome here anytime, man. Arnold grinned. Next time I come back, let's see what you really know about pool. That got a laugh from Wade, and from everyone else too. The final hour of the night melted into music and mellow chatter. Arnold stayed just long enough to finish his second beer, then grabbed his jacket and stood to leave. As he neared the door, Cora called out, "You sure you don't want one more for the road?" Arnold looked back over his shoulder. "No. But I'll take something better." She tilted her head. "And what's that?" He paused. "The memory of a night where the world reminded me that decency still matters." The door swung open. And Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped back out into the night. The night air outside Rudy's bar was crisp, tinged with the scent of sagebrush and distant highway dust. Arnold stepped into it with slow, steady footsteps, the same way he'd entered, calm, intentional, grounded. But something had changed. Not in him. In everyone else. Back inside, the door hadn't even fully closed behind him before conversation resumed with a buzz, like bees stirred awake by something larger than themselves. "Did you see how he handled that? I swear I'll never look at strength the same again. He made that guy shrink with just his words." Cora wiped down the bar with long, even strokes, replaying every second of the night. The beer spills, the tension, the silence, the transformation. It had been just a regular Thursday. Now. It was a story people would tell for years. And not because a movie star walked through the door. But because a man walked in, and left everyone just a little better. 2 days later, Wade returned to Rudy's for his usual Friday drink. But this time, he entered differently, quieter. His steps didn't demand attention. He nodded at people instead of tossing out wisecracks. And when he sat at the bar, he didn't even glance toward the jukebox. Cora approached, a curious eyebrow raised. "What'll it be?" Wade paused. "Whatever's light. I'm cutting back." She poured the beer without a word. He took a sip, then looked around at the crowd. Familiar faces. A few of them gave polite nods. Some even smiled. Finally, Wade spoke. "You think he'll ever come back?" Cora shrugged. "Hard to say. But if he does, I think he'll find a warmer welcome." Wade chuckled. "Yeah. I owe him more than just an apology." Cora leaned on the bar. "You owe yourself some grace. And maybe, a little change." He nodded slowly, truly taking that in. From a corner table, the college kid who'd played pool the other night overheard and approached. "Hey, Wade," he said, tentative. You good?" Wade smiled, a bit sheepishly. "Better than I was. Still learning." The kid smiled. "Aren't we all?" They shook hands. And for the first time in a long time, Wade Porter didn't feel like he had something to prove. Meanwhile, Arnold was miles away, already on to the next phase of his life. Early morning training. Meetings. Film notes. Public service calls. His calendar was full, his days structured. But even with his packed schedule, something about that night at Rudy's stayed with him. In fact, it inspired something. A week later, an Instagram post appeared on his profile. No flexing. No product. Just a photo. A dimly lit bar. A neon sign glowing Rudy's in pink and blue. Below it, his caption read, "Real strength isn't volume. It's discipline. I met some good people at this little place outside Santa Clarita. They reminded me that silence can be louder than fists. Be kind. Be powerful. And if you're ever at Rudy's, tell Cora I said hi." The post went viral. Not because of the celebrity behind it, but because of the message. Comments flooded in. "This just restored my faith in people. Grace is the new strong. Can we all be more like this?" Cora, who didn't have Instagram, only found out after 3 different customers showed her the post on their phones. She didn't say much, just nodded and went back to polishing glasses. But her smile lingered a little longer that night. In the months that followed, Rudy saw a small wave of new faces. Not tourists. Not gawkers. Just people curious about the story. People who'd heard there was a bar where something rare had happened. And they weren't looking for autographs. They were looking for that feeling, the sense that even in a small place, with no red carpets or bright lights, decency had walked in and taken a seat. Arnold never officially returned. But his presence lived there now, in the way Wade greeted new patrons with kindness, in the way the college kid offered free pool lessons to strangers, in how Cora added a new drink to the menu called the Quiet Giant. It wasn't fancy. Just a tall glass of Austrian beer with a rim of salt. But underneath the name, on a chalkboard in tidy script, read the words. "Kindness is not weakness. It's what strength looks like in peace." And so, Rudy's remained what it had always been, unfancy, unfiltered, undeniably human. But now, it carried a story. Not of a fight, or a clash of titans. But of restraint. Of humility. Of a moment when one man could have roared, and chose instead, to speak. And when he did, everyone heard.